America's middle class is collapsing, and the numbers tell a heartbreaking story. In 2025, over 65% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to pay skyrocketing rents, soaring grocery bills, and crushing medical costs. Millions are drowning in credit card debt, student loans, and high-interest bills, while the gap between the ultra-rich and ordinary families keeps widening. If you feel like no matter how hard you work, you're still falling behind, you're not alone, and this video is for you. Today, we're breaking down how America's debt crisis is destroying families, ruining the American dream, and forcing millions to rethink where to live, how to save, and how to survive financially in 2025. Before we dive in, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our in-depth breakdowns of the best cities to live in, money-saving strategies, and the hidden truths behind the U.S. economy. 1. Paycheck-to-paycheck living. The first way the debt crisis is crushing American families is simple, but devastating. Most people can't save. In 2025, roughly 67% of U.S. workers are living paycheck to paycheck, meaning that even households earning what many would consider a decent income are left with little to no financial cushion. Nearly a quarter of households spend 95% or more of their income just covering necessities: rent, groceries, utilities, transportation, insurance, and debt payments, leaving almost nothing for savings, emergencies, or unexpected expenses. The national average rent has climbed to about $1,750 per month, and in high-cost states like California, it's now closer to $2,600 per month. Meanwhile, the personal saving rate hovers at only 5% of disposable income, leaving most families extremely vulnerable to financial shocks. Let's put that into perspective. A household earning the national median after-tax income of roughly $88,000 per year is already spending nearly a quarter of their take-home pay on rent alone. Add rising grocery costs, utility bills, childcare, transportation, insurance premiums, and debt obligations, and there's virtually nothing left for emergencies. In fact, nearly 30% of adults wouldn't be able to cover 3 months of expenses if their main income stopped. The human side of these numbers is staggering. Families are forced to make impossible choices: skip medical care, delay car repairs, or cut back on groceries just to make it through the month. The constant stress of living on the edge takes a toll on health, relationships, and mental well-being. Imagine working full-time, bringing in what many would call a good salary, yet still feeling like you're drowning every month. One unexpected car repair, a sudden medical bill, or a spike in rent could push a household into crisis. This is the harsh reality facing millions of American families in 2025, and it's a powerful reminder of how fragile financial stability has become in today's economy. 2. Exploding credit card debt. The second shockwave in America's debt crisis is soaring revolving credit card debt, a sign of how deeply families are struggling to stay afloat. In 2025, U.S. credit card balances reached an eye-watering $1.23 trillion, one of the highest levels ever recorded. Delinquency is also climbing. About 12% of Americans have credit card accounts that are 30 days or more past due, and in lower-income areas, that number rises to nearly 18%. This means millions of families are falling behind on monthly payments, accumulating interest, and losing financial ground every single month. For the average family living paycheck to paycheck, this creates a vicious cycle. Minimum payments barely cover interest, and with the average credit card APR over 21%, balances grow instead of shrink. One unexpected expense, a car repair, a medical bill, or emergency childcare, can push families deeper into debt, forcing them to borrow just to make ends meet. The consequences are more than just financial. High credit card debt increases stress, reduces savings, and erodes the ability to invest in long-term goals. Families are trapped in a cycle where working harder doesn't get them ahead. It just keeps them treading water. Exploding credit card debt in 2025 isn't just a number, it's a warning. It shows how American families are being crushed by the cost of living crisis, stagnant wages, and the debt trap, making financial security feel further away than ever. 3. Housing costs out of control. The third way the debt crisis is crushing families is through skyrocketing housing costs, which have spiraled into an unmanageable burden. In 2025, the national average rent for an apartment has climbed to about $1,750 per month, with high-cost states like California seeing average rents near $2,734 per month. And if you're trying to buy a home, the situation is even more daunting. The median sales price for houses in the U.S. is around $400,800, making homeownership increasingly out of reach for many middle-class families. What this means for real families: a household paying $1,750 in rent each month is spending roughly $21,000 per year just to occupy a modest apartment. If their total after-tax income is around $88,000, nearly a quarter of their earnings is going to rent alone. In California, families paying $2,734 per month are shelling out over $31,600 annually, leaving minimal room for savings, emergency funds, or educational expenses for children. On the buying side, even a 20% down payment on a median-priced home, around $82,000, plus mortgage interest, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, is far beyond what many middle-income families can afford while maintaining any financial safety net. In fact, large segments of the rental market report that they're spending 95% or more of their income just to cover necessities, with housing as the largest expense. Any unexpected cost, a rent increase, a broken appliance, or emergency repair, can push families into a financial crisis. The domino effect: when housing costs consume such a large portion of the budget, everything else suffers. Groceries, healthcare, childcare, transportation, all compete for the leftover dollars. Families often delay maintenance on their homes or rentals because funds are already stretched thin, which affects living conditions and long-term stability. High home prices and rising interest rates are also keeping younger adults out of the housing market. The share of first-time homebuyers has dropped significantly, eroding a traditional path to building wealth through homeownership. Rising housing costs also drive migration. Families are forced to move to cheaper areas, sometimes sacrificing job opportunities, community support, or quality of life, or remain stuck in cost-burdened situations they cannot escape. Why this matters: housing is not just a monthly bill. It is the anchor of financial security. When costs rise faster than incomes, families are left with no margin for error. One unexpected expense, a sudden rent hike, flooding, or a broken HVAC unit, can set off a cascade of financial problems. Imagine spending nearly a third of your income just to keep a roof over your head while groceries, medical bills, childcare, and debt payments compete for the rest. Imagine the stress of knowing that if something goes wrong, you have no fallback. That's the reality in today's housing market, and it's blocking millions from achieving the soft life many aspire to: financial stability, peace of mind, and the freedom to live comfortably. 4. Soaring grocery bills. The fourth way the debt crisis is crushing American families is through soaring grocery costs. In 2025, grocery prices have doubled since 2019, with essential items like bread, milk, eggs, and fresh produce rising faster than wages in nearly every state. The average family of 4 now spends roughly $1,100 to $1,300 per month just on groceries, leaving far less room in the budget for savings, emergencies, or discretionary spending. For households already stretched thin by high rent, utilities, and debt payments, these increases are devastating. Families are forced to make impossible choices: buy cheaper, less nutritious food, cut back on essential items, or skip meals entirely just to make ends meet. The reality is stark. Millions of Americans are now experiencing food insecurity, meaning they are worried about having enough food to eat or must compromise on quality to survive. What used to be a routine grocery trip has turned into a monthly financial stress test. Even small price increases, like a few extra dollars on milk or eggs, can add up quickly, tipping families from stability to crisis. This isn't just about numbers. It's about the daily life of families. Parents are cutting corners, children are missing out on proper nutrition, and the stress of managing a household budget in 2025 is taking a real toll on mental and emotional health. The domino effect of soaring grocery bills is clear. When a third of your income is already going to rent, debt, and utilities, spending $200 a month on groceries can push even a middle-class family to the brink. Grocery inflation in 2025 is more than a statistic. It's a daily struggle, and it shows how deeply the debt crisis is affecting American families' ability to feed themselves and maintain a basic standard of living. 5. Healthcare costs break families. The fifth way the debt crisis is crushing American families is through skyrocketing healthcare costs. In 2025, the average annual healthcare spending per U.S. household has reached roughly $6,200, and that number doesn't even account for unexpected medical emergencies. Insurance premiums alone have risen steadily, with the average family plan costing about $23,000 per year for full coverage when including deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses. For families living paycheck to paycheck, this is catastrophic. Nearly 40% of Americans say they have delayed or skipped medical care due to cost, while more than 25% have medical debt they're struggling to pay off. Even with insurance, copays, prescription costs, and specialist visits quickly add up, pushing families deeper into financial stress. The reality is especially brutal for middle-class households. A simple emergency, like an ER visit, broken bone, or surgery, can cost thousands of dollars, enough to wipe out months of savings. Chronic conditions, ongoing prescriptions, and preventative care, while essential, often force families to make impossible choices. Pay for healthcare or pay for rent, groceries, and utilities. High healthcare costs also have long-term consequences. Families delaying care often experience worsening conditions, higher future bills, and added stress. Parents may skip essential treatments or medications, children may miss checkups or dental care, and seniors may face impossible choices between prescriptions and daily necessities. In 2025, healthcare cost inflation continues to outpace wage growth, making the dream of financial security nearly impossible for many Americans. This is not just a statistic, it's the reality behind countless stories of families forced to ration care, go into debt, or even declare bankruptcy due to medical bills. Healthcare costs in 2025 are no longer just a line item in a budget. They are a financial trap that breaks families, undermines stability, and exposes how fragile the middle class has become. For millions, every cough, injury, or prescription refill isn't just a health concern, it's a financial crisis waiting to happen. 6. Student loan debt crushes young adults. The sixth way the debt crisis is crushing American families is through mounting student loan debt burdens, especially for younger adults trying to build a future. In 2025, the total U.S. student loan debt has reached approximately $1.8 trillion, with more than 40 million borrowers carrying the load. The average student loan debt per borrower is now around $39,000 to $42,000, depending on whether it's federal only or includes private loans. The delinquency rate has surged. About 7.7% of student loan balances were 90-plus days past due in early 2025. The high debt burden forces tens of thousands of young adults to allocate a large share of their monthly income to loan repayments, money that could otherwise go towards savings, investing, or life milestones like buying a home or starting a family. Because monthly student loan payments reduce available cash flow, many graduates delay critical life decisions, buying a first home, getting married, starting a family, or pursuing further education. The so-called millennial home buying generation is increasingly locked out. Delinquency and default rates are rising sharply among younger borrowers. As payment reporting resumed and forbearance ended, many saw their balances move from current to delinquent, hitting credit reports and harming credit scores. This means higher interest rates, fewer borrowing options, and more financial instability ahead. The ripple effect is huge. When a graduate owes $40,000 to $50,000 in debt and enters a job market where wages have stagnated, they're squeezed from all sides: high rent, living costs, and now this debt load. It erodes the idea of upward mobility that higher education was supposed to deliver. The generational trap. What makes this crisis especially hard is that it targets the future builders, the young adults who should be laying foundations. They now face the harsh reality that education, once seen as the ticket to success, has become a financial load dragging them back. Many are working full-time, paying their bills, and still carrying student debt well into their 30s and 40s, making it much harder to break free and build wealth. Why this is a key part of the story. Student loan debt isn't just a separate category of borrowing. It's deeply tied to the housing market, consumer spending, and the retirement pipeline. When so many young adults are preoccupied with debt repayment, they spend less, save less, borrow less for homes, and invest less for retirement. In short, the debt burden stunts economic growth and personal growth at the same time. Imagine graduating with optimism, then facing monthly payments, delayed home ownership, postponed family plans, and damaged credit. That is the reality in 2025 for millions. 7. Rising utility and energy bills. The seventh way the debt crisis is crushing American families is through rising utility and energy bills. In 2025, the average U.S. electricity bill is about $167 per month, and in some regions with higher rates or extreme weather, monthly bills can exceed $200, $300, totaling $2,400, $3,600 annually. For families already stretched by rent, groceries, and debt, these essential costs are another heavy financial burden. Many households must make tough trade-offs, such as reducing heating or air conditioning, delaying appliance maintenance, or cutting other necessities to stay afloat. Unlike discretionary spending, utility costs are unavoidable. Rising bills reduce financial flexibility, leaving families vulnerable to emergencies or unexpected expenses. For millions of Americans in 2025, soaring utility costs are not just numbers on a bill. They're another anchor keeping them trapped in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. 8. Corporate layoffs and job instability. Even when people are employed, job security in 2025 is more fragile than ever. Corporate layoffs are on the rise, with thousands of companies across tech, retail, finance, and manufacturing announcing workforce reductions. In just the first half of 2025, over 1.2 million workers were affected by major layoffs nationwide, leaving families suddenly without income and facing uncertainty about the future. For middle-class households living paycheck to paycheck, a sudden job loss can trigger immediate financial instability. Without months of savings, families struggle to cover rent, utilities, groceries, and debt obligations. Many are forced to rely on credit cards or loans just to make ends meet, deepening the debt trap. The ripple effects go beyond finances. Job instability increases stress, affects mental health, and disrupts family life. Adults delay major life decisions like buying a home, starting a family, or pursuing further education. Children may experience instability in schooling or household routines when parents face employment uncertainty. In 2025, the reality is clear. Even full-time employment doesn't guarantee security. Corporate layoffs and job instability are a growing threat to middle-class stability, making it harder for American families to plan, save, and build a secure future. 9. The wealth gap widens. The growing divide between the ultra-rich and the average American is more pronounced than ever in 2025. Billionaires are seeing their wealth soar, with the top 1% now controlling nearly 40% of total U.S. wealth, while ordinary workers struggle to cover basic expenses. Meanwhile, wages for the median worker have barely kept pace with inflation, leaving millions stuck in a cycle of paycheck-to-paycheck living despite working full-time. This gap isn't just numbers on a chart. It has real consequences. Families face skyrocketing rent, medical bills, and grocery costs while the wealthiest invest, grow assets, and accumulate tax advantages that widen the gap even further. The result is a stark economic reality. Financial mobility is shrinking, homeownership is harder to achieve, and retirement security is slipping out of reach for countless Americans. The psychological and social impact is equally severe. Economic inequality fuels frustration, anxiety, and despair, eroding confidence in the system and creating a sense of hopelessness for those trying to get ahead. For the middle class, every financial decision, from paying rent to managing debt, feels like a tightrope walk, where one misstep could trigger a crisis. In short, this widening wealth gap isn't just an abstract statistic. It's a daily struggle for millions of families, a pressure point in the U.S. economy, and a powerful force reshaping what it means to achieve the American dream in 2025. 10. Mental and emotional strain. Finally, the financial crisis isn't just about numbers. It's taking a serious toll on mental and emotional health. In 2025, studies show that nearly 60% of American adults report feeling stressed about money, with over 40% experiencing anxiety related to debt and living expenses. For millions of families, financial instability isn't just an occasional worry, it's a daily reality. The impact is profound. Stress and anxiety affect decision-making, sleep, and overall health, and in extreme cases can lead to depression. Parents juggling rent, groceries, medical bills, and debt obligations often feel trapped, with little margin to breathe or plan for the future. Children in these households can experience emotional strain as well, with studies showing that growing up in a financially insecure home correlates with higher rates of anxiety and behavioral challenges. Financial pressure also affects marriages and family relationships. Arguments over money are one of the leading causes of relationship strain, and families under constant financial stress often struggle to maintain harmony and stability at home. Communities feel the ripple effects too, as local economies are shaped by how much residents can spend, save, and invest. The truth is stark. In 2025, economic instability is more than a statistic. It's a human crisis. Every late bill, every debt notice, and every unexpected expense chips away at mental health, emotional resilience, and the ability to plan for a better life. Families are not just fighting to survive financially. They are fighting to preserve their peace of mind, well-being, and hope for the future. For millions of Americans, this is the unseen cost of the debt crisis. The stress that quietly erodes lives while bills pile up and opportunities shrink. It's a reminder that the economic challenges we've explored throughout this video aren't just about numbers. They're about the daily struggle to live, to care for loved ones, and to maintain a sense of security in an increasingly uncertain world. As we've seen throughout this video, the financial pressure facing Americans in 2025 isn't coming from just one place. It's coming from every direction at once. Housing costs are rising faster than incomes. Grocery bills stretch budgets thinner every month. Healthcare, debt, energy, and everyday essentials are becoming unaffordable. Jobs are unstable, the wealth gap keeps widening, and families are carrying a mental and emotional burden heavier than ever before. This is the reality shaping millions of households across the country. It's the story behind the migration trends we're seeing, why families are leaving certain states, why people are searching for cheaper places to live, and why the middle class feels like it's shrinking day by day. These aren't isolated problems. They're connected, forming a system that makes it harder for ordinary Americans to build stability, security, and generational wealth. But understanding the problem is the first step toward navigating it. Whether it's choosing a more affordable state, adjusting your financial strategies, or simply staying informed, knowledge is the most powerful tool you have in times like these. The landscape is changing fast, and those who pay attention will be the ones who find opportunity in the midst of overwhelming challenges. So as we close, remember this. The goal isn't just to survive the economic shifts happening around us. It's to be strategic, prepared, and empowered. Because even in difficult times, there are places where you can live well, stretch your income, and build a better future. And on this channel, we'll keep exploring those options together, one video at a time. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like, substance, and stay tuned, because the next episode might just help you find your next home, your next opportunity, or your next step toward financial peace.